Welcome everyone to the Tory Burch Foundation Small Business Webinar Series. My name is Sahara Lake and I am the Programs Manager for the Tory Burch Foundation. Very excited to have you all with us today. And I want to just take a second to thank our sponsor for this webinar series, Campaign Monitor. So today, for our first session of 2022, we are joined by Karen Spears, who is the founder and CEO of Character, a Chicago-based branding agency that uses a human-centric approach to working with clients. And so we're really excited to have Karen here with us to show her really unique and special mind mapping technique that she uses with her clients. We've asked if you all can have markers, sticky notes, an iPad, paper, whatever you like. We're hoping that we can, make this session as interactive as possible. So after Karen presents and shows you all the technique that you can then, think on and take into your quarterly planning, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A with Karen. So throughout the session, please be sure to use the Q&A function. You can continue to use the chat to introduce yourselves and talk to each other, but for specific questions, please use the Q&A box, and the team and I will be managing that, and we'll make sure we can get to as many as possible by the end of the session. I also want to tell everyone that a recording of this webinar will be shared on our YouTube channel after the session today, and we will also share any URLs in the chat. And then Karen also very smartly has put QR codes in her presentation. So if you want to follow up, you can scan that and save that for later. I think that is all the housekeeping we have for now. So Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Sahara. Let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today. You'll be mind mapping a quarterly plan. So if you're anything like me, you are a small business owner, just a doer, an everyday dreamer. You wake up and have a ton of ideas, and you just want to execute all the time. But what I've learned in this very special, unique space that we're in, pressing go may not always be the thing that we can do. And a lot of times it takes for us to take a step back and just see everything, the big picture at large. And mind mapping is a very special thing that I implement. And I would love to firstly introduce myself and give you a better sense of who I am, so that you understand where I come from and what this mind mapping thing is all about. So there we go. So this is me. I'm Karen. I'm the founder of Character, creative studio based in Chicago, Illinois. And I help business owners and established organizations build their brands with personality. And our work is inspired by the uniqueness of handwriting. Insert mind mapping. So mind mapping is a very special lane for me. So I'm going to share a quick video introduction of who I am and a really cool visual that I made. So give me 1 second as this load.
I've always been known as the girl with the neat handwriting. As early as the 2nd grade, you could find me jotting my thoughts, ideas, and aspirations through illustrated words. As I grew older, I realized my handwriting was not only a natural talent, but it was art that had the ability to inspire. Mind mapping is a type of creative brainstorming process that has allowed me to explore my dreams without limitation. My name is Karen Spears, founder of Character, and I believe mind mapping is the new vision boarding.
So that's me in a nutshell. I've always been known as the girl with the neat handwriting, and I've taken my handwriting and made it something bigger than what I could have imagined. And so just to give you a trajectory of where I've been and where I am now, I'm a 90s baby. So I grew up watching a ton of Disney movies. Ironically, my favorite color is green, but I realized that looking at a lot of baby pictures that my mom always dressed me in green for whatever odd reason. So it's my favorite color. And that's definitely a part of my brand today. So I, grew up looking at a ton of Disney movies, and one that really stands out to me is Pocahontas. Pocahontas has like a ton of the color story that Pocahontas tells it just inspired me so much. And I love that color palette. And I'm always inspired by toys that the color palette of toys that I used to play with growing up. And I can remember this Barbie camera that I had that just, made my imagination run wild. And those are my roots. So growing up on the South Side of Chicago, inspired by color, come from a creative family, come from a family of doers and entrepreneurs who always, took what their natural talent was to make it something like their side hustle or something that they can sell in addition to their day job. So those are my roots. So by the time I got to college, between high school and college, I started to put my unique gift of handwriting into work. So my senior year of high school, a girl commissioned me $16 to make a painting with her favorite Dr. Seuss quote on it. And as you can see, this was a excerpt of a news article that one of the people on campus, they actually got of me during this phase of my life. But when I got that commission, that was my first practice in creative entrepreneurship. I was able to really put to practice having neat handwriting, and, making it into art that people can enjoy and share with others. And that's the dawn of everything. And then my first business was called the Korean Pears. Oddly, that was a nickname that was given to me at the time. And I would make these really fun quote canvases and sell them at the consignment store in my my college. And so when I got featured in this article, it went viral. Essentially, the AP Associated Press picked it up and it got published all around different publications. And that's when I knew that this was my talent. This was something that I could really run with. So all throughout my first 2 years of college, I would, create these canvases, sell them on Etsy, sell them in a consignment shop, and I really loved it. But it wasn't until my senior year or my junior year where I wanted to really pivot. I realized that painting could be time consuming. I wanted to graduate on time, but I really did want to continue to use my creativity just in a different format. And so that's when I taught myself Adobe Illustrator and became a graphic designer. And learning that process was so, very eye-opening to me. Not only teaching myself a brand new software, but I definitely wanted my handwriting to be at the center of everything that I did. And so I loved business. I loved creative problem solving. And so I wanted to learn how to digitize my handwriting so that I can make logos for small business owners. And the root of branding is being so unique that, no two brands are alike. I think that handwriting allows you to do that. Branding in itself is so unique, and your business should be like that too. And so my goal was to create hand lettered logos. And that's when I rebranded into Character, where we created letters with personality and built brands with personality. And so post grad, I continued to, use my art and gift of handwriting just in different formats. I created art, made lettered logos, which you can see on my website, and all these things that applied my natural talent. And then fast forward to today. As you all know, running a business can be very overwhelming at times. There's a lot of problem solving that goes into our work in whatever medium, whether you're a service-based business or product-based business, you'll always have to leverage your creative problem solving, instinct and really work through things. And a lot of times it can be very daunting and very scary figuring out where to go next. And I hit that point, as you all know, in 2020, where life was at a standstill. I was actively running my business online, but didn't really know what would happen if, businesses that I worked with cut a budget for design. And so I kind of went into this mode of how can I pivot? How can I, get myself out of this? And how could I protect myself from the changes that were happening during that time? And so I did what I've always done and went to my pen and paper and started mind mapping and started jotting down my notes, every idea that was in my brain around how I could problem solve and troubleshoot things that were going on in my business to protect myself. That was the thing that gave me the most life during 2020. And so what I realized in just, engaging with my community online, running into these roadblocks was the same for a lot of my network, and they felt like they were stuck. And so I wanted to, share my insight and my creativity and the way that I helped people or help myself get out of a rut through this medium. And so 2020, I introduced mind mapping. I would do one-on-one sessions where people could sign up. And the goal was to get them from creative idling, so feeling like you're stuck, to creative ideating, right? Like getting to a place where you have a ton of ideas and you want to just pick a bunch of them to start. And that's the beauty of mind mapping. And as you can see in this picture, let me go back. In this picture, this was my old apartment, but I would have a bunch of like sticky notes everywhere on my wall. And that was what brought me to life and seeing my goals every day. And I still use it to this day, by the way. So you may ask, what are some different ways that mind mapping could look in action? Well, again, this is my wall. I have a bunch of like big canvas sticky notes on my wall where I'll just go to it. I make this a daily practice so that I can get my freshest ideas onto paper. And for me, I believe that that's the first step in manifestation. So my philosophy behind that is the bigger the idea, the bigger your paper should be. So for long-term planning, like quarterly planning, I would suggest having big paper to work with so that when you wake up every day, you have a goal, you see it, it becomes real by the day. I also leverage mind mapping with my clients. So my clients usually, I'm in the creative business. So I'm here to solve problems, to increase their bottom line through marketing and branding. And so a lot of the times my clients kind of know what they want, but they kind of don't know what they want. So I, suggest having a mind mapping session where we can explore what their ideas are. And this technique is super helpful for them to connect the dots between what they want, what they think they want, but what they actually need. So I can come in and visually see on paper their ideas come to life and then make those connections. So mind mapping is really helpful in that way. And then lastly, I leverage mind mappings for my to-do list. Sometimes we resort to the basic checklist, but I'm such a visual person. Like I have a ton of markers, I'm very particular about my notebooks. So I love mind mapping in a sense of, color, right? Like making the process fun. And I'll do my task priority chart in a very beautiful way. I'll have like 5 different markers when I do them. And this is just a photo example of how I get that done. So mind mapping can be leveraged in a ton of different ways. And the biggest thing is that you don't have to be an artist to know how to mind map. Let me click the slides. So here's some tools that you could use as part of the mind mapping process. Again, I've given a few examples of like, if we go big, what you may need, and if we, keep the notebook, this personal notebook, what you may need. So I'm very particular about what I use. This is not sponsored, I promise. But I love this notebook style. It is on Amazon. It's about $20, but I love the dotted line paper that it has. And dots make it super easy to draw lines and shapes to make it really neat. So dotted paper for notebooks is what my preference will be. And then also any colored marker, but I love this particular brand. It has a fine tip and it doesn't bleed through paper. So if you're looking to buy some New Year's, tools to start with, I would definitely suggest these 2. And then the last 2, if you're looking to go big, if you have a bunch of white space on your walls in your apartment, or you just want to do it with a team, I suggest going big. So these Post-it notes, I think they're 16 by 20. They're really easy to peel and stick on the wall. And then Sharpie markers, fine tip, or any permanent marker that doesn't bleed through the paper would be my suggestion. And again, going back to my note that you don't have to be an artist to mind map. Mind mapping should be fun. It should be creative. It shouldn't be one of those things where it's a chore that you have to like take a class on. I know this is kind of like a crash course on it, but if you know how to make a circle, a bubble, a smiley face, bubble letters, if you like, a heart, any emotion. We call these little things gestural marks, or even a square. You can draw anything, or a triangle. You can draw anything. And so I, suggest if you want to warm up, practice these shapes so that you can get in the groove of, making your paper a little bit more fun and interactive to engage with. Start here. If you want to take a picture, this will also be in the follow-up email that the team will send to you afterwards. Going on. So now that I kind of gave you a deep dive around what is mind mapping, how I leverage it, let's apply it to your business. So a lot of the times when we're business owners, we're often caught up in the day-to-day. It's a lot of managing. It's a lot of micro decision making. And I like mind mapping for my business because when we enter a quarter, we want to make sure that we're actively working toward our goals. Again, like my video said, I believe that mind mapping is the new form of vision boarding. Oftentimes when we make a vision board, it usually happens in January and we set it and forget it. We don't have time to revisit it. We usually cut out these images that are so idealistic, and so, grandiose that, sometimes it doesn't translate into what is your next step. And I think that mind mapping allows you to visualize and think through what your next step is. And it can be as small as you opening a notebook and writing it down. And so mind mapping is super helpful. It meets you where you are. You don't have to have all these things figured out. You really just have to sort through what your big ideas are and then create actionable next steps to do that. And so for the purpose of this call, we're not gonna mind map together. I'm gonna walk you through the framework of the mind map that I highly recommend and encourage you to create time and think space for. So if you have a notebook or an iPad handy, what we're gonna do is I want you to just kind of trace out what you see on the screen and then fill in the notes so that when you revisit it, you'll have the framework in order to do your own mind map. So we'll start with the mind map. The second thing is the goal of doing the mind map is to create your milestone. So whatever your milestone is for this quarter, that's what we're going to determine in this mind map. So once you have your mind map, we'll come up with your milestone, and then we'll go into creating your quarterly plan, which you'll also get as a template as a part of the follow-up. We feeling good? Put it in the chat. I hope you're feeling good like I am. I'm super excited about this. I love planning. I love, falling in love with the process. I think that that's the most important takeaway that I want for you all to take away on this call. We're doing great work, right? Whatever field you're in, this world needs you and your unique gifts. And I think as business owners, having that mindset and always, always tackling the challenge as if it's a new opportunity, I think that mind mapping allows you to really explore what that could be for you. Okay, let's get started. So this is the framework of a mind map. Now, this isn't the neatest mind map, and that's okay. But the goal is for you to walk through this to kind of give you my train of thinking of how I come to determining what my milestone is so that I could create my quarterly plan. So I'm gonna use my cursor to guide through the mind map so that you can get an understanding of each quadrant and then what you'll, create time and space to do for yourself. So the first is what you're gonna do is create a title. So whatever your mind map is or your goal for the quarter is, that's what we're gonna name the mind map. This is your opportunity to get super creative. We're all creatives as business owners, we, have this sense of always coming up with something unique. So give it something that you'll fall in love with, whatever that title is. Make it cute. Make some boxes around it. You see, I put like my little square, my little shadow, my drop shadow. I love doing that. That's like my go-to. And I also like writing in bubble letters and cursive. So make your title really fun. So the next part is super important, is exploring your emotions. As people, we make decisions based on our emotions. So it's really important for us to check in with ourselves so that we know that we're making the best decisions in the best mood possible. And oftentimes when we're feeling stuck or we're feeling like we don't know where to go, we're often feeling not our best. So it's important to explore what your mood is before you go into creating a mind map. And so we create space for that initially. So on this left side, I put mood, right? So the point is, I don't want you to write down just one mood that you're feeling because we're human, we're dynamic, we have a bunch of different emotions that go on at once. Write down as many moods as possible. Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling thrilled? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling nervous? Are you feeling explorative? Like, what are some moods that you're maybe feeling in this season in regards to your business or whatever quarterly goals you want to set, and sit with that. On the right side, the why, right? Why, explore why you're maybe feeling this way. What's coming up for you. I want you to create that this first box and then really explore your emotions without feeling like you have to pick one. But the goal is to get as much out on paper as possible. So if you feel like, you want to time yourself, usually that's a great method. Usually giving yourself maybe like a minute to answer this and fill your boxes in as much as possible, that always works. But the goal of a mind map is to put as much down and then we narrow it down. So in the first box, in the mood box, once you have, let's say, 10 emotions that you may be feeling all at once, what you're going to do is circle the one that's coming up for you the most. What's the loudest for you? So circle that. And then the why, explain why that's coming up for you in the next box. So then once we finish the first quadrant, you're going to create whatever shape in whatever space you want to write, and what's in your way. So a lot of the times when we're feeling these feelings, is usually like we feel like we can't do something, or something's in our way. So whatever that may be for you, explore what that is. Brain dump. Is it, you don't have enough of this, you maybe don't have a partner to think about this with. Maybe you feel like you're alone in the process, right? Whatever that is that's coming up for you, write it down. And again, it could be a paragraph, it could be short doodles, it could be, you just kind of brainstorming and working through a bunch of different things that, may be in your way. So that's the section of roadblocks, right? And again, I want you to exercise it and narrow it down. So whatever is the biggest thing that's in your way that you're like, if I just have this one thing, I can move forward, circle it. And then we're going to take that and then go into the next box that you're going to draw, which is QTNA. So if you don't know what QTNA means, it's questions that need answers. And so the goal of this really is to reframe our thinking. A lot of the times we get so bogged down about, what we don't have, and that, thinking about that deficit mindset. But what if we thought about problem solving through an abundant lens? That's the goal that we're trying to get here. And so instead of saying, I don't have enough money, we reframe our roadblock into a question that we actively can find an answer for. So the questions are starting off as, how might I? May sound like, how might I? How much is? How might we? So things that kind of open the possibility up for you to really think about different ways to approach it. And as my favorite rapper, Jay-Z, would say, there's a million ways to get it. I like that because there isn't one route to success. There isn't one route to solving a problem. There's multiple different ways that we can do it. And a lot of the times we always think we have to do it by ourselves. I'm a product of mentorship. I'm a product of community. And obviously the Tory Burch Foundation creates a solid community where you can tap on another woman who is doing similar things, or maybe something completely different that you can, have as a resource to answer that question for you. And so the goal in this section is to reframe our roadblocks and to figure out how can we not make that a roadblock anymore. So make sure when you're writing down your questions, frame them in how might I, how might we, or how much is, so that we can open up that window of possibility. And then after that, once let's say you have 20 questions, I want you to circle your top one that you feel like encompasses a lot of what your roadblocks, what is rooted in your roadblock. And think about it, right? That's why I created a section where you can reflect. So reflection could look a lot different from a lot of different people. It could look like meditating. It could look like closing your notebook for a minute and, talking to a friend, calling a friend. It could look like you writing a paragraph if you're a writer. It could look like you playing a song to reflect on some of the questions, or playing a podcast or a YouTube video. But the most important part is that you're reflecting on your emotions, what's in your way, and then thinking about all the questions that you want the answers to, and sit with yourself for a minute. I would recommend maybe scheduling out 10 minutes for this section, just so that you can realize where you are in your process. So once you're done reflecting, then we'll move into the wheel of resources. This is my favorite. When I thought about this name, I immediately thought of Wheel of Fortune. But I love Wheel of Fortune. My grandparents look at it all the time. It's like rooted in my identity. So anyways, rule of resources, I like to break them down into 3 quadrants or 3 sections. Here we're answering the question, what do I need to get what I want? And that is the most important thing that can help us answer our questions. So thinking about all those questions that we need, right? Like if we circle that one, what are some digital resources I could tap on? Tory Burch Foundation has a ton of videos, a ton of resources that you can tap on. So Tory Burch Foundation may be a website that you put down in your digital resources. Another could be tangible resources. So that could look like I need a car to get from point A to point B. It could look like I need a plane ticket to get out to find, a space that I want to grow my business at. Or a human resource could be a person that you can tap on. So maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your parent, a mentor, or, your best friend that can, who's an expert in a certain area that can answer one of the questions in your QT&A box. So the point here is to list as many resources and possibilities as possible so that your roadblocks start to look like opportunities at this point. So that's your wheel of resources. And looking at it through those different lenses gives you the options to tap on and pull different levers to get you where you need to go. So once we're done with the wheel of resources, we can draw a little box to our solution box. And this is basically a sentence answering one or more of your QT&As. So once you have, hit up the Tory Burch Foundation website, find a video of an expert talking about something very specific that you're not knowledgeable in, now you can create a solution. Maybe they've lended you the answer that you've been always thinking about. So now once you develop this as a sentence, the goal, well, let me backtrack. The goal is to put as much as many solutions as possible in this solutions box. And then the goal is to now reframe that as a sentence of how you'll tackle that question or how you'll tackle that roadblock that you've experienced. And then the goal is to create your sentence. And then that'll be your actual goal or your quarterly goal that you want to tackle throughout the next 3 months. And so this is basically saying how you'll write down how you approach your new goal. So if your goal is to make a certain amount of money, you going back to your digital resources, finding what you've been missing, and then create the plan or the goal or the milestone of how you'll achieve that goal. So that completes the mind map. And just like any plan or any goal that we want to reach, my belief is that you always have a number attached to it. And that number could be anything. It could be the time in which you want to achieve it. It could be the number of people that you want to help you achieve that goal. It could be the amount of money that you would need to get to that goal, or the amount of money that you will want to make attached to that goal. So always, whenever you're jotting down a actual, something that you want to achieve, make sure you find that number to attach to it. And then lastly, you want to date every mind map that you have. I have dated my mind map since 2014. And I love going back into my old notebooks and seeing me draw a visual of something and seeing it come to life in a completely different way. And I think that is really important of being an entrepreneur and looking back. I think I saw Sarah Blakely talk about her journey in Spanx, and she would have all these pictures and she would date them. Like, she wore this shirt everywhere. And I think that there's such a beauty in reflecting on how far you've come in your journey. And I think mind mapping has been one of those tangible things that I could be like, wow, like my handwriting used to look like that, or like, this is what, I was challenging myself back then. And in a quick story, I used to write down for each canvas that I would sell, how much I would sell the canvas for. And I would be so happy to see the number 300. Like, that was a lot for me back then. And so now to see that that's like pocket change and like, how much I've grown since then, it's so important to document your journey. And that's what I love most about mind mapping. It meets you where you are, and it allows you to document where, what you used to view as a roadblock, but now is something that you're just killing the game in. So I love this process wholeheartedly. Okay, so that completes that. So I want to give you a sense of what this mind map can turn into. So this is actually a prototype and a framework that I like to refine my quarterly plan with. So once you're done with your map, you'll come up with your milestones. So in that last box that we went through, your milestone was essentially what you're looking to achieve for the next 3 months. And that milestone will be inserted in this circle. So if you have a pen and paper, I would definitely, or a camera, definitely grab a picture of this, but we'll also send this in a follow-up email. This is just, a picture of how I do my quarterly map when I refine it. So once you have the rough draft of your mind map, you're going to take the good parts of it, the ones you highlighted, and then translate them into this framework. So this is your quarter. So imagine we're planning for March, April, and May. That's 3 months. The goal is for now to divide your milestone into chunks. And so in 3 quarters, right, it's 4 quarters out the year, and they have 3 months. So this represents 3 months. And again, like I said, every goal should have a number attached to it. So in this case, we're going to attach each phase of our quarter into 30-day project. And so the first project is your brainstorming and strategize. A lot of times when we come up with an idea, or at least for me, I want to start on it right away. And I realize that I have, there's so many steps that I need to get done before I actually press go on it. And we don't give ourselves enough time to really brainstorm and strategize what this could look like in action, and explore the possibilities, the pros and cons, things like that. And so I like to spend time with my idea, because the more time that you put and invest upfront, the easier it is to execute. That's what I've learned in the creative process in general. So if I could translate it, it's like mood boarding. It's like, really, coming up with the inspiration to help you get to that starting point, and really find a starting point of how you want to start your project. So give yourself time to create and play, brainstorm and strategize. So if we're to break this down even further, use 15 days to brainstorm and use 15 days to strategize. So then once that's done, go into the next month, and then we'll prototype, and then we'll test. So this is also very reminiscent of the design thinking process. If you aren't familiar with it, I definitely suggest looking into it. But the goal is to test out make a prototype of your idea, which is a lo-fi version of whatever big thing that you want to make. It's usually low cost. It's usually something that you can make quickly, so that you can, go for it and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is just a starter to what I'm thinking. Will it work? And so take 15 days to prototype whatever that may be for you. And then lastly, test it. So testing can look like sharing it with a few people, your personal board of directors, if you're familiar with that term, like having 3 people in different fields and different backgrounds give you feedback on what you've created. Usually business owners have, those seasoned business owners, they're telling them what to do, they're advisors. So if you have personal advisors or friends that you trust, definitely share your prototype with them to get that immediate feedback on it. And then the last phase is to iterate and refine. So just kind of like how we did with the mind mapping, we explore all the possibilities and we narrow down. That was the iteration process, right? This is the refinement process. So once you have your prototype ready and you tested it and you know what you want to improve upon, take some time to sit with that and iterate in that next 15 days. So in this box, and then the last, you're going to refine it. So does that look like actually, building out your prototype? Does it look like making a version 2 or your final version? Whatever that may look like for you in your creation process, put that in the last box. So give yourself 15 days to do that. So as you can see, these are we're breaking down our quarterly plan into mini sprints to give ourselves equal time to actually go through and give each part of the process the attention that it deserves. And then lastly, your milestone, you would have reached it at the end of your quarter. And I always love reflecting on what I've learned and how far I've come. So always in your process, in your creation process, in your business planning process, it's really important to, revisit the brainstorming and strategy process, revisit your prototyping process, and write down the things that you've learned. It's so important because we learn from our mistakes, and the more that we reflect on it, the more that we can avoid making those mistakes again. That will allow us to pivot smartly whenever we're doing our quarterly plan again. So I hope this is super helpful in how you are thinking about tackling your next quarter or your next 3 months. So that completes the webinar, but it doesn't complete our time together. I definitely want to hear any questions that you may have. Definitely feel free to ask about my process and how I kind of go about it. But before I end this, definitely scan the QR code to be led toward my website. This is a really fun thing as a result of me implementing mind mapping. So just like I said, in 2020, when we were hit with the lockdown, a lot of the things that were going through my head was like, how can I make my creation process accessible? How can I share it with other people and really help them get to a place where they're exploring their possibilities too in such a weird time? And then when I had the mind mapping sessions, I did about 50 during 2020. And what I've learned was that people felt like it was creative therapy. They could find their starting point. They could really go after and get clarity around what they wanted to achieve during such a bleak time. And I used what I've learned in that prototype phase of mind mapping and created the Character Academy. And the Character Academy, we've beta tested it in 2021, spring of 2021. Oh my God, I'm getting the years confused. And we had about 8 people in our class, and they all came from different industries and different backgrounds, and wanted to really think about how to, approach their brand or business or side hustle methodically. And a lot of times it's the learning of who we are and what we do. And the Academy creates the time and space for you to go through that. And the Academy essentially teaches you branding techniques through the lens of mind mapping. So every module has a very specific subject, but we go through and you can actually mind map out problem solving and really become an expert at your own brand. It is beautiful. I loved bringing together 8 women in this class to really go through this really creative process. And people of all backgrounds were engaged with it. So if it's something that you're interested in, or if you'd like to have a one-on-one session, just follow this link and then learn more about what this could be. But if you're like, no, I just kind of want to test it out and have a one-on-one, you can do that as well through our inquiry form on our website. And the unique part about this is that we're in partnership with GatherRound, which is a really cool new app. It's similar to like, it's like a video conferencing service, but they center the human conversation around it. And Lisa Khan, who's the co-founder, had such a great keynote speech in our last class, and is so bright and brilliant in her area of expertise. And so she graciously got on board with this. So I'm super excited to have them again for the Character Academy for this year. So if you're interested, please let me know. And then lastly, I am open for questions. I just want to thank the Tory Burch Foundation for giving me the platform to be the first speaker of the year. This was amazing. Thank you for having me.
Karen, that was awesome. And you're getting a lot of love in the chat and the Q&A box as well. That was really, really great. So I just want to take a few minutes to ask some questions. It would be great, actually, Karen, if you could go back to the mind map slide. I think most of the questions will probably center around that, and I'm sure people would love to see that visual again. So maybe just as we talk, we can keep that up.
Okay, there it is.
So Nick Adler, they asked a really good question of if you could provide an example of a product that you created with this process. So I'm sure we can get really in the weeds, but if you could kind of high level give an example, I think that would really help folks.
Yes, that's a great question. So actually the Character Academy is a result of this process. So I can kind of give you a time frame of how that all went through, and I can start from the beginning. So once we realized, so I work a lot with service-based businesses and product-based businesses and nonprofits. And a lot of the times we're creating visuals and graphics for them. But when the pandemic happened, I realized a lot of my clients also didn't know what would happen. And so they actually did the exact opposite of what I would expect them to do, which was they, as any creative and any person who has a ton of ideas, they use that opportunity and capitalize on it in such an amazing way. And so 2020 was one of my best years yet because I had such a roster of clients that could create a ton of new ideas in this time that felt so bleak for us all. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that I was okay. So if any of my clients decided to, cut a contract short or, switch gears on how they invested in design, I would be great too. And so I created this new service offering where I did one-on-one mind mapping sessions. So this was my prototype phase. This was a result of me, meeting myself with my feelings. I was feeling pretty anxious. I was feeling nervous about the future. I didn't know if, what would happen during that era. And so I wanted to use those feelings and create something new out of it. I wanted to use my process of thinking through problem solving that I use personally and develop that in a way that I can help someone else that may have been going through the same thing. So what was in my way at the time was pretty much that access to learning about this. How can my pain point at the time was, how can I make mind mapping something that I do with a pen and paper virtual, because everything was virtual during that time. And so the question become like, how can I show people me writing on the screen virtually? So I had an iPad, I downloaded an app that allowed me, that could work with my Apple Pencil. And this is actually this is a product that I use for virtual mind mapping, which is the WeTransfer suite. This is actually paced by WeTransfer, so it's a really fun and interactive presentation. But they also have Paper by WeTransfer that is an app for iPad. So if you have iPad and Apple Pencil, it works like a charm. And I created this virtual mind map on that app. So my solutions was to create a virtual way for me to show my notes through that way. And then I downloaded like a screen mirroring app. So my first roadblock was solved. I could share me drawing on the screen to a viewer in a Zoom room. And so that was how I could.
Karen, what was like the sentence that you wrote in that solution box for that? Did you write like,
yes, that's
find
correct.
a virtual planning tool?
Exactly. So so the QTNA was, how can I share my notes virtually? And then the resources would be download apps that I could, put on my iPad that were compatible with Apple Pencil. So there's a few different, writing apps. My solution was, okay, Paper app, screen mirroring software, and that was my solution to share on Zoom. And then my goal was to get at least 20 mind mapping clients within that time period. I ended up having 50 over 3 months, like a 3-month period. And so that was a really great goal that I set for myself because I exceeded that goal. And so that was my goal, is to really get this mind mapping to be accessible in a way that can help my user get from creative idling to creative ideating. And so that the refinement of that mind map and that initial prototype that I did was a Character Academy, really learning why people signed up for their mind mapping session and how could I create this into a course that's something I can monetize to help supplement me in a time of unpredictability. If a client decided to cut a contract with me because of the pandemic, I had another stream of revenue that could help me get over. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that was helpful.
Okay.
I think another question, and this is also a question I have personally, like, what is some advice you have on holding yourself accountable to these goals? So you make your mind map, you move it over, you're taking your 15 days to, ideate, reiterate, but how do you keep that, daily, weekly, monthly accountability going?
I love that question. And I think that's a part of what I baked into the Academy, which was having people that can hold you accountable to your goals. But if you're like me, who's a solopreneur who, is working at home by themselves, that doesn't have their team with them every day, what gets me up in the morning is seeing my goals, right? Like visually seeing them. So oftentimes when we write them down in a notebook or on a sticky pad, we'll just throw them out or we never revisit them. But that's why I love the bigger paper for your mind maps, because you can stick it on your wall and actually see it every day. And I think that alone is a game changer. So when you break those milestones down into those sprints, you can see what you're working towards for that next 15-day period.
That's great. That's really helpful. Another question that came through on the Q&A box is, how can a founder use this process to approach branding?
Oh, love that. So branding is, I like to think of branding as like the cupcake analogy. I'm such a visual thinker, y'all. So when I think about a cupcake, or I turned 26. I'm losing my age. I turned 26 and obviously I couldn't have a birthday party. So I went to Whole Foods to give me a little cupcake. And my process of finding the right cupcake, I wanted to see first if it was cute, what kind of color sprinkles that it had, what the color of the icing was, what the color of the cake was. That was a visual presentation. So I like to think of the visual output of any brand or business as like the fixings that go on your cupcake. It's the pretty thing. It's the thing that reels people in, that makes them want to say, hey, I want to work with that cupcake, or I want that cupcake to eat. So I think of your logo or visual presentation as just that, right? But what I realized is that when I bit into the cupcake, it actually tasted really good, right? But sometimes you bite into a cupcake, be like, oh, it's super cute, but it tastes disgusting, right? You want your brand or business to taste like it looks. And that's where the cupcake analogy comes into play in the academy. So in the academy, we really figure out what is your signature ingredients to your cupcake to make it look good. A lot of the times we have this vision of, oh, we want our logo to be this way or that way, but does it attract that person that you want to buy your cupcake? Oftentimes we don't really think about that. So the mind mapping and the character academy, in terms of branding, we break down those fundamentals and really figure out what ingredients can we put into your own personal cupcake batter. So that's just a visual analogy that I like to use as far as how we leverage mind mapping and branding. And if you go to the website, you'll see those modules that break down what we discover in those mind mapping sessions.
That's great. I think people had a similar question. How would you use this for financial goals? Could you give an example of that as well?
That's a great question. I actually started heavily mind mapping. And again, disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor, but I do like to think about my business goals when it comes to numbers. And I like to set really scary numbers as my goals. And if it doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. So mind mapping for me, when it comes to budgeting, I kind of approach it in a different way. Assessing my finances is the first step. So really understanding, so if we were to reframe it as a mind map, understand where your money is going initially. So what I do is also think in quarters when it comes to money. My last 3 statements, really figuring out where's my money going? What subscriptions do I have? Really doing an audit. So then when I want to see what's in my way, am I not making enough? Is my money being spent in the wrong places? You assess those through your mind map. So then now you can narrow down and really see where your money is going. And then I also like to take it a step further to really figure out, okay, I'm here, but I want to be there. Using your mind map to really figure out where your money is going, but what you can supplement your current revenue to get you to your goal. And so mind mapping kind of helps to explore the possibilities of either service offerings that you have, new products that you can introduce to what you already sell, so that you can think out of the box around how you run your business. Because again, there's some businesses that sell one thing and that's all they sell, but the best way to gain revenue in your business is to offer a menu of things in different ways. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. And I think going off of that question, Karen, like how do you anchor a mind map by product or by service, by people that are offering multiple products and multiple services?
Multiple products and multiple services. So I want to also put a disclaimer that—
Or do you do it by idea?
That is what I was going to say. So it really is dependent upon what you're starting your mind map with.
Right.
Obviously, mind maps can be applied to any topic. But I think it's that process of exploring where you are and where you want to go to really help you find a start point. And that's the point of mind mapping, is to dump as much as you have in your brain on paper to see it, narrow it down, and really figure out what direction you want to go in. And a lot of the times you may need a person to support you in that process. And that's where I come in. Since I am such a creative person, I have such a visual way of thinking about things. I can see the gems that is in your brain that you may not see because you're so close in your business. But mind mapping is just a creative way for you to explore the possibilities for whatever creative challenge that you're looking to solve.
That's great. Another question I see here. someone asking you to expand on what you mean by tangible resources in that wheel of resources. So I think in your example, you talked a lot about the digital resources. You've spoken a lot about, your community and being anchored in mentorship, but what would be an example of a tangible resource?
Yes, so tangible is something you can touch. So things. So I gave an example of, like, let's say if you don't have a car, right? Like if you live in a city, you go by train, but you hate that it's cold outside and you need a car to like drive further. That would be an example of a tangible resource that you would need to get towards your goal. Maybe it's, an amount of cash, right? Money is also a very real resource that we need to get things done. So whatever dollar amount that you may need, or physical object that can help either speed up your process, or make your process more efficient, that could help you in your brand or business, in the development of your brand or business. Is that helpful? Okay, cool.
I lost the mute. Yes.
Okay, I'm knocking them out. I feel good.
No, you're good. And questions are coming in. I think you've touched on some, but can you just name, I'm going to ask explicitly, some digital resources that folks can use? So if this is a question you have, get your pen out and take notes. What are some digital resources that you can use to do this mind mapping and prototyping?
Okay, excellent. So I love that. I think I answered your question wrong way. So is it in regards to the mind map, or just
I think in general, folks love this. And you talked about WeTransfer, and I think people are looking for just other resources and tools they can use to do this exercise.
Okay, excellent. So iPad. I am an iPad stan. I just upgraded to the iPad Pro and I love it. Not only because the screen is a little bigger, but since I'm a lettering artist, I needed something that I could feel like I'm writing on pen and paper with, and the iPad was the tool that I need to digitize a lot of the hand lettered logos that I would create for clients. However, mind mapping, since this is a very integral part in how I run my business, this is also super helpful. So iPad is the hardware that I got. I haven't really, purchased or compared iPad with any other device. So there may be other tablets that could be useful in this process, but iPad is my go-to. And then as far as the app, there is my favorite is Paper by WeTransfer. That's my favorite. I've tried other notebook apps, but I don't feel like they, really harness the creativity that I'm looking for in an app. I like this one because it gives you different paper options. It gives you different pen options. And it actually looks like a notebook and is very intuitive to work with. So Paper by WeTransfer. And then as far as for my iPad, I know this isn't a digital resource, but I have this cover. It's like a screen protector, but it feels like you're writing on paper. So if you are using mind mapping on your iPad, I definitely suggest getting some screen protector that makes it feel that just gets that friction, because it's kind of weird writing directly on the screen. So I hope that's helpful with the digital resources for mind mapping.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. We're coming down towards the end here, but I want to ask some questions around just the timing that this takes. So how far in advance should you be mapping for each quarter? And then, for people that are just getting their businesses started, like how far in advance should your business be planned out? I think that's a question that folks are wondering as well.
That's a great question. So I can speak for myself as far as how I go about business planning. Some people have really robust processes that they do with their teams, they do it with advisors. But when I do it myself, I like to sit with, what is it that I want? I know what my skills and talents are. I know what I can achieve. And, success looks different for a lot of different people. So really understand why you're running your business. I think that's the first question you should ask yourself. And what fulfillment do you get out of it? Because if you're not fulfilled with what it is that you do, that's something important to sit with yourself with. But if you know your why behind everything that it is you do, that is the most important part to understand. So for me, I love the process of creation, and my mapping makes me fall in love with creative challenges and creative problem solving, because it makes it feel like an art project. And innately, just approaching creative challenges in a fun way is just a different way of reframing our thinking around running a business and achieving our goals that feel scary. And so what I like to do in my process is, block off a weekend. So that means Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, a weekend to really create the space for myself, whether that's booking out a peer space or, inviting a friend over to join me for a planning session, getting my markers together, getting my paper in order, right? Creating the time and space and putting your phone on D&D to do your mind map. And to have someone to support you in that process is my suggestion. For my Q1 22 mind map, I blocked off the last Thursday of December to do it. And usually I'll do it like a month in advance or the month before or 2 months before the quarter starts so that I have my plan solidified. So by the time that first day of the quarter comes around, you have your plan, you're ready to go. So again, make this feel fun, right? It shouldn't feel like it's a chore. It should feel approachable. It should meet you where you are and you can pick it up at any time. And all you need is your brain, your ideas, and some cute colors to go with it.
I love that, Karen. So last question that we'd like to ask everyone, but if people only take away, and I hope they take away more, but if they only take away one thing from your presentation today, what would you want that one thing to be?
Yes, I thought about this too. I want everyone in this call to fall in love with their process. A lot of the times running a business, while it is exciting and it's glamorized and the perks of it are wonderful because, it gives us this freedom. The point of it all is that, we're creating and doing great work for the benefit of other people. And I want the more that you fall in love with what it is that you're offering, the better that output is going to be for the people that you are serving and creating for. And I want you to also walk away knowing that you can have fun with it, right? Like it always doesn't have to feel like a chore. And mind mapping is a fun and creative way to approach creative problem solving in just a childlike way that really gets us back to basics, get us to a point of creativity in this point of exploration. So that's what I would leave for you all, just to have fun and make this, something that you can incorporate as a daily practice as you are conquering the world and achieving all the things that you want to achieve in this lifetime.
I love that, Karen. And just to, I think something that I'm taking away really, because I love making a vision board. And I think this mind map is like a tangible way to break that down. So I'm also taking personal notes for myself. So thinking about that, 15 days to brainstorm, that 15 days to try it, and then, 2 months to implement. Is that kind of the breakdown timing wise?
Type, implement, iterate, repeat, right? Like, so making that.
Say that one more time, because that was really good.
I'm gonna actually go back to the slide. So that let's see. Next slide. There we go. Whoops, too fast. It's kind of delayed.
No worries.
One more, 2 more. There we go. So the first phase, brainstorm and strategize. So once you brainstorm, you're throwing out the possibilities. You strategize which possibilities that you want to work toward. You prototype from those possibilities, like I want to pick this one and try it out. Once you try it out, you test it, on other people, you get feedback. Then once you get that feedback, you iterate and improve upon the feedback to make it better. And then you refine it. So that's like polishing, your diamond once you found it. And then, really repeating that process in any goal that you tackle. I think that is super important to have a, beginning to end to it. A lot of times we would just want to do it and get it done. But we know there's always a first draft, a rough draft to everything that we do. And so this process, when you bake into the time, that possibility of brainstorming and testing, it makes achieving our goals a lot more tangible.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen, for sharing your expertise with our community. It's been really, really great. So everyone,